But like, how do you even choose? Hello, fellow book nerds. This is Gabby, and today we're talking best books of 2022, and we have a hefty list because I couldn't decide. It's like 2 weeks before the end of the year when I'm filming this, and I read 113 books so far, hoping to get to 122. We'll see how that goes. But, that means that it was so hard. Picking 10 books that were the best in the year. Are you joking? I read so many amazing books. I could do a top 10 for most genres, really. Amazing reading year. I had so much fun. But you know, I did choose some books, so we're gonna talk about those. And I hope you agree with me, and I hope you get some recommendations out of this. We're gonna go from bottom, and I have 4 honorable mentions, and we're gonna go through them relatively quickly because there's a lot of books on this list. Okay, so number 14 is Light from Uncommon Skies by Ryka Aoki. So this book is a kind of like contemporary sci-fi fantasy where we follow a trans girl who's a violinist, and she's really good, and she escapes home, and then a very famous violin teacher finds her, discovers her, and they work together. But this book is so much more than what I just said. There's aliens, there's pacts with demons, there's found family, and lots of love, basically sapphic relationship. It's all pretty amazing, really, and I loved it. So I would highly recommend a book from a trans author that's also Japanese. Like, I just really hope you pick it up. Then we have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So this book is a horror. It's set in like the 90s, and we have a book club who slays vampires. There's this old suburban town where all of these housewives live, and then a mysterious man comes to town. Surprise, he's a vampire, and there's some slaying to do. I love this book because it had humor, it had tension, it had interesting lore. It just had so much to give, and I really had a great time with it, so I would highly recommend. Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri is a fantasy book, fantasy romance, and we follow a princess, I think, who gets... Ooh, I feel like I'm gonna get this wrong. It's been a while since I read this. I think she gets betrothed to someone she doesn't know. It's really cool. It's by the author of the Jasmine Throne. It's really well written. I don't remember what it's about, but it doesn't matter because it's all about the relationship, because it's a romance, and the relationship was relationshiping. I love it. I think there's gin, I think there's magic, and it's overall really cool. And last honorable mention I wanted to mention is Do You Dream of Terra-Two by Temi Oh. So this book is a sci-fi, and it's about a group of teenagers that get recruited into this space exploration program, and the whole book is basically them traveling to Terra-Two, which has been identified as a possible alternative to Earth because Earth is falling apart. And I love this book. It's such an exploration about, you know, loneliness, purpose, space. I just really loved how that was executed. I had a great time reading this book, and I thought it was really emotional, really well done. I just had so many interesting ideas and conversations sprinkled in. All right, now we're going for the top 10. Number 10 is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. So this book is a memoir by Jennette McCurdy, who played Sam in iCarly, an iconic Nickelodeon TV show, who I actually never seen. But I was a big fan of Victorious, and she was in the Sam and Cat spin-off, and overall just like a big star that I remember from my childhood. And this book is about her experience being a young actress, a child star, and being really severely neglected and abused by her mother. It's her issues with weight, stardom, her mother, just so many interesting conversations that I had a really good time with. Well, good time is a weird way to put it. It was an audiobook, and it's read by the actual actress, and I just thought that was such an interesting, immersive visceral experience, so I enjoyed that bit of it. I just thought it was so well written, and I think she's now signed a deal for a fiction book, so I'm very interested because in the book she says it was her dream to be an author, not an actress. I'm super interesting to see what she comes up with, and I want to support her. Number 9 is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi, Patel. So this book retells the story of the main antagonist villain of the Ramayana, I think that's what it's called, Kaikeyi, who was the queen of a kingdom, and then as time goes on she is accused of hating her stepson and being this tyrant that exiled him despite him being a hero. And this is from her perspective, retelling of what happened and why she made the decisions she made, why she was the villain. Was she the villain that everyone made it out to be? If you're a fan of Cersei, I think this book will really be up your alley. I loved it. It was so beautifully written. It was such an amazing time, and I think the conversations about female friendships, and then misogyny and kind of history and how people perceive you versus who you are, and power. I just thought all of that was really done well. Again, if you like Cersei, you probably will like this book. I just thought it was such a gorgeous exploration. It was a really interesting book that told a really compelling story, and I love the writing of it, and I cannot wait to see what else the author comes up with. So really looking forward to that. But yeah, like hands down, and also the cover is just so beautiful. I'm sad I don't have it. In number 8, we have The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. So The Hacienda is a Gothic horror, I guess. It's a story inspired by classic Gothic novels like Rebecca, and it tells a story about a young woman in Mexico whose father was killed, so now she has to kind of get married well to be able to provide for herself and her mother. And she meets this guy called Rodolfo, who is affluent, has a good standing in the government, and has a hacienda, a house that she could be the donna of. And when she gets there, it turns out there may be some malevolent spirits that do not want her to be the donna of the house and are not ready to welcome her. There's also a romance with a priest. This book has layers, but I loved it. I thought it just had such a clever, well-written protagonist. It was really spooky. It scratched that Gothic itch that I had. I just felt it was really fun. The romance was really good. Well, it wasn't fun again. It was kind of dark and scary, but it was scary, and I loved that, and I loved how unsettled I felt. I really liked the relationship with the priest and how that turned out. I think there were some aspects of the story where I was asking myself a little bit like, you should push a little bit, you know, get more answers, you can do it, girl. But overall, I do think that the story delivered on every level I wanted it to, and I really loved it. I'll keep recommending it because it's just like, I love Gothic novels. I love Gothic horror. So this book just brought me joy, and I really liked that it was set in Mexico, and it was just like a more interesting, nuanced, different take on the Gothic novel. Number 7 is The Red Palace by Jane Her. So this book is a historical Korean mystery novel. I know it sounds amazing, and it is. So in this one we follow a palace maid whose boss or like mentor gets murdered, and she kind of entwines herself into the investigation of what happened and works with the local like police officer, constable, whatever they're called, to figure out what happened. If you're a fan of K-dramas, especially historical K-dramas, you will enjoy this one. It was so well written. I think the romance was on point, the mystery was on point, and the historical element just worked so well and made it so that much more compelling, that much more fun and interesting. And I just thought it was all done very well and executed in a way that it really brought back both of best of both genres. It was like a good mystery that I would have enjoyed anyway, and like a good thriller, but then on top of that it had that historical setting that's just so unique and different, and then it had a good romance and relationship. There's really like so many levels that this book worked for me. I know that Jane Her has more books, so I'm super excited to try her other work out because I was so impressed by how well this book was constructed and how much fun I had with it. So I really hope that I get to read more of her work next year. But so for this year, The Red Palace makes it onto a list, and I want more historical mystery. Like, I feel like I usually read, well, maybe that's just what I read, but it's usually either like there's historical romance, okay, I know that's a genre, and I know there's a historical fantasy, but mystery, especially Korean mystery, is just like so cool. I love it. In number 6 Project Hail Mary by Weir. So this book is by the author of The Martian, which I've never read, but I have seen bits of the movie. In this one, we follow a man who wakes up at a spaceship and doesn't remember how he got there, doesn't remember why he's here, what his purpose was, who he is. He has no memories whatsoever. So the book really is figuring out why he's on the ship and what's happened to Earth, where is he going, what was his mission. And honestly, the audiobook is just so well done. It's so well performed, it's so immersive, it's got like multimedia-ish elements. I just liked how interesting and engaging it was, so I really loved the audiobook. But the book itself was just like amazing. There was like one of the most compelling friendship stories I've ever read. Honestly, it was just so, it's like a banger after banger after banger with this book. I just felt like at the edge of my seat for the whole time. There's gonna be a sequel actually, so I'm super excited. Not sequel, sorry, what am I saying? There's gonna be a movie. It's gonna be a movie with Ryan Reynolds. I don't see Ryan Reynolds as this character, but you know what, whatever, I'm sure he'll do a great job. And I just really loved this book and I want to read more from the author. I also know that people said The Martian was good and his next books weren't as good, and then now this is kind of like being back to form, so I'm excited to experience that. But yeah, really solid sci-fi all the way throughout. I really loved it. Okay, number 5 is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. It's about a black woman in 1970s who gets transported back in time into a plantation back in a time when black people were still enslaved in America. And she kind of keeps going back and forth, and it's about her and her ancestors. This whole book is just absolutely amazing. Not only is it well written, it has really well developed and examined characters, but it's just such an interesting concept, and the conversation in this, her like talking to her ancestors, but then also she keeps going back and forth, and the element of like involuntary, like she has no control over it, and also like her going back in time and time flowing differently, and her husband is like a very big part of this. And I just felt like the experience of a modern woman at the time in this truly horrific part of the history, it was just such a powerful look that really shook me to the core and helps to examine that period of time. And I thought it was a very unique look at the topic, and it was honestly so well executed. This book is pretty thin, but it has so much to say in such a potent and amazing message, and just again, not even preaching, but like exploring it with you. I thought that worked really well. I really enjoyed the book, and I thought it all tied together really beautifully. And I want to read more from Octavia E. Butler because she clearly has a very unique look. And I think the fact that this was written in 70s or 80s, I think, and it was such a modern feeling sci-fi was really shocking to me, because I guess I didn't appreciate that this kind of book existed even back then, because it felt really modern and the conversations were not outdated at all and they were really relevant. So I really loved Kindred, and I would highly recommend it. In number 4 we have Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is the newest book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who's the author of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. And this one we follow, it's it's not a contemporary, it's historical fiction set in the 90s and 70s, 90s. And we follow a tennis player called Carrie Soto, who used to be the best in the game. She won the most like Grand Slams and was a very respected and well awarded player who was considered the best in the game. Now it's 10 years later. Carrie's been retired for about 10 years, and there's a new player who's about to take her title of the most Grand Slam wins ever. So she decides to compete one last time to win back another title and get back her glory. This book is really a beautiful exploration of fame and pride and workaholism and kind of like what you can miss if you don't remember to look around you from time to time, and kind of also a beautiful father-daughter story because her father is her coach and they have a complicated relationship, but I thought it was a really interesting nuanced look at that. Carrie is Latina, I think, and I feel like Taylor Jenkins has a tendency to be writing BIPOC characters when she's not BIPOC. So I didn't love that, but I do think that the book itself had so much value and so much to say, and really was just so tense, and it made me care about tennis so much. It made me understand tennis. I just really enjoyed also that the book explored a different industry than, you know, acting or singing. So I just thought it was really well done. It was coming back to form for Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it was just really well written anyway. All right, we're at the big three. So these are podium places, so you know it's a big deal. But in number 3, we have Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. So I've read basically all of Silvia Moreno's books this year. I had a whole reading vlog when I read all of her works. Mexican Gothic was probably my favorite. Honorable mentions here would be The Beautiful Ones, Gods of Jade and Shadow. I think those were my top 3 books from her. But I also bought Signal to Noise, so I want to pick that up at some point. But Mexican Gothic is another Gothic novel set in Mexico, I think also in 1900s, and we follow a woman whose beloved cousin got married to kind of a mysterious man and went to live with him in a rural part of Mexico. And a couple months later, her and her father, the main character and her father, get a letter from the cousin saying that they're poisoning her, the new family, there's like ghosts in the wall and there's disturbing noises, and basically she's terrified and she asks for help. So the main character's dad actually sends her to check out whether her cousin needs psychological help and needs to be committed, or like what's happening with that household. So she goes to this very rural part of Mexico and kind of has to live with this super creepy family and figure out what's happening. And then of course weird things start happening to her. She hears voices, can't sleep, like all kind of, you know, scratching, blah blah blah, the whole Gothic shebang. And honestly, like I loved Hacienda, but I think I loved Hacienda because it reminded me also of Mexican Gothic. I just think it's such a well-written book. It was so disturbing, so weird and scary and gross, and you just really get like sucked into the story. The atmosphere building was out of this world, super spooky, and just made you feel uncomfortable at all points. This whole book deals with some uncomfortable subject matters, so like you will be uncomfortable anyway. But I just thought it was so well done. It's also like short, but sucks you in, like had me by the throat. I loved it. I even liked the relationship, although it was also freaking disturbing. And I would highly recommend Mexican Gothic. It'll be on one of my top books, and Silvia Moreno-Garcia is an amazing author. Honestly, I wanted to put all of the book, like at least 3 of her books on this list, but I just felt like let's have some other authors come and shine as well, but like honorable mentions. Okay, it's time for book number 2, second best book I read in 2022. Are you ready? It's A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy Island. So we have a girl who, when she was young, brewed a tea that poisoned her mother, killed her, and then also poisoned her sister, but just left her terminally ill. She's lived with the guilt of it for her whole life, and now she gets to maybe redeem herself because there's this contest going on with the royal palace that is looking for the best tea brewer. So tea brewing in this society is also magic, so it's kind of like a magician also that they're looking for. But tea brewing has like magical properties and it's an art form. So the main character decides to join this contest in order to perhaps win and then get in good graces with the royal physicians so that they can help cure her sister. I love this book. It was so whimsical, beautifully written, super rich descriptions that just made everything sound so beautiful and gorgeous. And I loved the art of tea making and how that was the magic system, how it was all connected with each other. I just thought that was really beautiful and really made me feel like I was a part of this world to an extent. And like I feel like this book and a lot of books by East Asian authors just have this tendency to use words that really play on all of your senses, and I just felt like I could smell this tea, I could feel the magic in the air, I could just really absorb it all, and I really loved that. And I thought that was such a great part of the book, and it was just so well written, but also it was a story about friendship. I really liked the main character. Overall, it was a banger. I'm going to be reading the sequel really soon, so I'm super excited for that. But yeah, it's just a duology, and this book only recently came out in the UK, but I bought it when I was in the US, and it was like honestly the best purchase ever, so I'd highly recommend it. This means that it's time for the best book of 2022. I had the hardest of times picking just one. I mean, all of these books honestly are so good, they're probably like equal of each other, but the book that I finally settled on for my favorite book of 2022 is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie, another Korean mythology inspired book by a Korean author. I loved this book. So in this one, we follow our protagonist who's lives in this village where the Sea King takes a bride every so many years, and it's considered, or maybe every year, it's considered like a sacrifice to the sea to make it appease it and appease the sea god and make sure that you know, their fish aren't dead, they can do their job, that the people don't die at sea, that kind of thing. And this year, the main character's brother is convinced that his love will be the one chosen because she's beautiful and it kind of exemplifies all the virtue that they hold sacred. And he goes out to stop his love from getting sacrificed, and the main character jumps into the sea instead of the love because she doesn't want her brother getting hurt. So she kind of sacrifices herself to the sea and goes to the sea kingdom and meets the sea god and kind of tries to unravel the curse that's been put upon her town. I love this book. I mean, I just love Korean mythology. I love East Asian books in general. I think, like I said already, the writing is always gorgeous. It's always so visceral and so effusive, and just brings out all this imagery to your heart and to your brain and just makes you like really sucked into the story. And I just thought the story was so beautiful. The romance was so well done. The whole concept of the red string was like really interestingly done. I just felt like every step of the way when I was lost in this world, it was just more beautiful, more whimsical, more interesting things for me to find out. It was heartbreaking, it was heartwarming, it had all the necessary feelings and thoughts. I think I read this quite a while ago. I don't even remember that much about the actual plot, which makes me so happy because I can reread it. But I just thought it was gorgeous. I think I might have read this as an ebook, and then I was like, no, I need this book on my shelf because it's absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking. But if you love East Asian fantasy, if you love Korean fantasy, if you like beautiful purple writing, pick up The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea because it's my favorite book of the year, and I cannot believe that. I mean, I can't believe it. I think last year my favorite book of the year was Six Crimson Cranes, so I definitely have a type, if you couldn't tell. Like, this was gonna be my favorite book, but then this one came. I have a type, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I should just play up more to my type, but I do think that I read a lot of really interesting, unique books this year. Hopefully this list was emblematic of that and really showed that I've read a lot of interesting genres, a lot of interesting writers, and a lot of interesting stories. If you're interested in like details of my reading, whether it was LGBTQ, whether it was how diverse it was, how many books I read, how many pages, how many audiobooks, all of that, there will be a stats video coming. If you want to know my worst books of 2022, it's a much shorter list, but I have already released that video, so you can check it out. Please tell me, what is your favorite book of 2022? You know mine, tell me yours, and I will read it because I need more wonderful books in my life. All right, well, thank you so much guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, if you could comment, like, and subscribe, I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. But that's it from me, and I hope you have a wonderful new year and Christmas. I don't exactly know when this video is coming out.